What is there to say about this game? Well, it got quite a bit of hype over the media and got advertised quite a lot. And seeing this as getting bigged up as a new AAA game, you can go ahead and take the correct presumption that this game is nothing special. Actually, comparing it to most AAA failures, then this one is pretty good. I'm sorry if it seems like I've got beef with most AAA games, but this is most likely because I've got beef with most AAA games. See, most AAA games are a lot like Kinder Surprise. Despite looking good on the adverts, you know that the second you buy one is the second that familiar feeling of disappointment sets in. Now take a guess to see if this applies to Murdered Soul Suspect. Sorry to start this rant off by grammatically throwing the blasted thing in the bin, but I seriously believe that that's where this game belongs. Well, maybe the rubbish bin is the wrong place. More like a discount bargain bin. It's not a bad game, don't get me wrong, it's definitely not a bad game, but it wasn't an alright game either. This was sold to me again as a blockbuster game, but how in the hell can you call this one a blockbuster when I finished it in about 5 hours, after I completed all the main missions, and side missions, and got almost all the collectibles, and then spent some more time running around the game map looking for the rest of the content? It was too damn short. Which I was actually quite happy about, because it then gave me more time to play through a game that I actually enjoyed, namely Quantum Conundrum, which I won't review because there's not much else to say about that game other than, get it, it's worth your time. Anyway, back to Murdered. The premise of Murdered is that you are Ronan O'Connor, a shit cop with a shit name, who is after the Bell Killer, named so not because he teabags his victims, but because he leaves a mark on each of his victim that looks like a bell. But then soon after the opening credits, you get killed by him, and then instead of getting the classic game over screen, you come back as a spirit and have to solve your own murder in order to get closure and move on to the afterlife. To do this, you must gather clues and solve different puzzles in order to find out the killer's identity. Now, you may be forgiven for thinking this is the result of what would happen if you put LA Noire into the Super Collider, along with an episode of Scooby-Doo, but let me shit on your parade right now by saying that both LA Noire and Scooby-Doo are better than this game. At the start, I was getting into it as I was trying to put the pieces of evidence together myself, and was trying to solve the case before the big plot twist presented itself, but the problem here was that I was presuming that this game's plot has any form of logic attached to it. Rather, the logic might have been added at the beginning of the game's development, but as the game kept adding in more occult elements, the logic part just kind of withered away and died from neglect. Alongside Ronan is Joy, a psychic girl who can see him, and the two eventually pair up because Joy is being targeted by the murderer, and her mother has disappeared and thus needs a detective to solve all of this, and Ronan needs an ally in the physical world to do stuff. Joy isn't a bad character, because she's been thrown into a murder case all of a sudden, and is under threat from a murderer, and being on the blob probably doesn't help either, but Ronan on the other hand, is just dull. At the risk of making a cheesy joke, it's ironic how a game called Murdered Soul Suspect stars a lead character who's utterly soulless. There's not much emotion shown on his part, and his backstory is barely developed at all, only through reading messages from his former fiancée, whose character is more interesting, despite not being in it for most of the fucking game, and even with that aside, Ronan's character is never developed any further, like it's presumed that his personality is so good that it could carry his character by itself. Well, that's a bit of a leap of faith. That's like saying that this game is going to be great even before it was released. Oh, kind of like what happened with its advertisement campaign. Spoiler alert, as I can tell you now, you won't get who the killer is because it's that shit. I went through the game thinking that the killer was either Rex or perhaps Joy's mother, and I was kind of on the right lines to begin with. I didn't think it was Baxter because it was too obvious, and my connection to the spirit world must be strong because I was right. It wasn't him. Well, the mother got ruled out eventually because she was in a safe house and out of the way, so it looked like it was going to be Rex. But Rex was actually being controlled by a spirit, so it wasn't him either. Near the end of the game, it's grandly revealed at the last second that the Bell Killer is actually Abigail, a spirit child you met near the start of the game who died in the 1600s, apparently for being a witch. And believe me, there's nothing in the game up until the end that will give this away, so don't even try to figure this out until then. Abigail is back from the dead and is possessing cops and killing girls who are psychic, or the modern equivalent of witches. But here's where things get confusing for me. If the whole dead girl coming back from the grave and killing people wasn't enough. She was killed for being a witch and came back from the dead to get justice on those who killed her. So why does she then start killing off those who are on her side? Surely she should have been going for magistrates or even cops themselves. Where's the logic in what she's doing? They'd be like Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar who was burned during the Friday the 13th Purge, who prophesied as he was being killed that he'd come back from the grave and kill all those responsible for his death, but instead comes back and kills the rest of his knights. I think you went for the wrong side, mate. Or maybe Colonel Gaddafi coming back to life and killing loads of his countrymen. Bad analogy. He did that whilst he was still alive. Wait, what were we talking about again? The actual gameplay is okay. Nothing special, just okay. It's like LA Noir in that you need to run round and round a small patch of the map until the game nudges you, telling you that you're standing on something that might be evidence. Then once you've found enough of these things, you can either put the case together yourself, or maybe possess someone in order to get more information, which sounds good on paper, but believe me when I say that this game has found a way of making spiritual possessions boring. You can read someone's mind and listen to them harp on about why their husband is good for nothing, or you can make them think of a topic by getting them to think of a topic, which might help you figure out something that you probably already got on your own. But because Ronan has the IQ of a chocolate Pop-Tart and hasn't got it, that option doesn't appear as a piece of evidence. Oh, and there are some combat sections as well. Yep, thrown in there just for the sake of it. You know what, these sections are easily the worst parts. Occasionally, a level will throw in some token demons that you have to destroy by, and I'm not joking here, this is really what you have to do, walking up behind them really slowly and pulling jazz hands on them. I wish I was making this up. I'm not trying to take the piss here, this is really what you have to do. Walk up behind them and then deploy the jazz hands. If done right, with a pointless QuickTime event thrown in for giggles, then the demons will be killed, which doesn't make sense when you consider that these demons weren't alive in the first place. You'll need to employ some stealth in these sections, which usually includes hiding behind some walls, and maybe jumping out of them in the last second and going for the anus. Or you can hide in spirit spots, or whatever they're called, which are usually placed in some really redundant places, like right next to each other, or all in one spot, when logic would dictate that they're scattered equally about the place, which makes it a bloody pain in the rear when a demon is looking for you, and your choices of hiding places are 3 spots right next to each other, and the demon is right there too. It becomes less like hide and seek and more like a which cup holds the ball game. 2 more things I have to mention. First one, bugs and glitches. I first saw this one on Gamespot's review, but I have to show it to you because it's hilarious. When you possess a cat, oh by the way you can possess cats, you can get them to meow, but if you constantly mash the meow button, it looks like the cat is having a stroke. Also, the inconsistencies in this game are incredible. It's explained that despite being able to walk through walls and scenery, like you're a camouflage, bad, invisible, non-clipping motherfucker, well, you are a ghost after all, you can't actually walk through every wall. This is mainly because the developers couldn't be bothered to design every building's insides, but in this game, it's explained that you can't go through these walls because these houses have been blessed. Okay, I can accept that. But in that case, you need to pick sensibly which buildings have been blessed and which ones haven't. I can accept if the police station has been consecrated, but I find it hard to believe that I can walk in and out of crypts and mausoleums no problem, suggesting that burial sites and graves haven't been blessed. Surely that's at the top of the list of places they'll get blessed the shit out of, rather than the local post office. Last point to make, what a fucking shit ending. This game is one of the worst endings I've ever seen. The general gameplay wasn't bad throughout the whole thing, and I was kind of expecting a bad moment to appear, but this moment seemed to wait until the end. This is where you'll get the horrible plot twist, and the entire end level was just terrible. If I had to sum up the general feeling of the end, it'd have to be, think fast, too slow. You put on a 20-second timer to figure out something very specific, and you'll spend 5 seconds of that, so that's 1/4 of the time, just navigating your way around those hellish hand things, 10 seconds if you're caught by one. The only way you'd get it first time is either if you already knew what to do, or made a lucky guess. If you fail, which I did about 7 times before googling the answer, then you have to start it again. Now, the first thing I tried to do here was run up to Abigail, but that didn't seem to work and I failed. So I then tried a load of other stuff but kept failing. But after googling the answer, I found out that what I had to do was what I tried to do the first time. You're supposed to go out to Abigail and activate her, but for some reason this didn't work the first time. Only after I stood next to her for several precious seconds did an activate button appear on the screen. And then I finished the game with its crap ending. Oh, and does Ronan get spirited away, and I don't mean in the Studio Ghibli kind of way? Well, that's kind of open to interpretation, because he doesn't straight away like everyone else I helped throughout the game. But in a cutscene at the end, right before the unskippable credits, you hear your fiance's voice, to which Ronan turns around, and then it's over to the credits. So this could technically be open for a sequel, which I really hope they don't do. I think that all of the possible material that could have been used has already been used in this game, so a sequel would most likely be even worse than this. In conclusion, I can only sum up this game in the same cheesy joke that I was silently saying to Ronan the entire time. Get a life.
Sometimes I think this life is killing me. Sometimes I think this life is killing me. I swear it's killing me. This life is killing me.